It's a new chapter in a very, very old story. Syria is but the latest brush fire in a chronically troubled region. Whether it's Damascus or Cairo, Beirut or Gaza, Baghdad or Kandahar, it's hard to imagine a front page without the phrase Middle East violence.
We are all agreed, and that includes Russia, that there will be consequences.
No less cyclical is the pattern of foreign intervention from natures bent on controlling, influencing, or worse still, fixing the troubles.
If we fail to act, the Assad regime will see no reason to stop using chemical weapons.
Coming up, we'll get the Syrian perspective and an insider's look from the Globe and Mail Middle East Bureau Chief, Patrick Martin. You'll also meet the Vicar of Baghdad, Reverend Canon Andrew White, a man whose daily attire includes both a collar and a flak jacket, as we ask, what do Westerners not get about the Middle East? This is Context, a look at life beyond the headlines.
And what don't we get about the crisis in Syria? Are we in the West properly informed about talking right and wrong and moral absolutes or military intervention? Patrick Martin is the Middle East Bureau Chief for the Globe and Mail. Omar Al-Ghabra is the Syrian Canadian, and he's a former member of Parliament. His family currently lives in Syria. Omar and Patrick, thanks for joining us at Context. And I think we just have to start with Syria. Omar, all of your family is there, your parents, your siblings, your aunts and uncles. What kind of danger are they facing? How are they?
They're in one of the safest parts in Syria. They're in Damascus. No one is safe in Syria. But the situation in Damascus itself is a little bit more normal than the rest of Syria. So schools just started last weekend. Started on Sunday. People are trying to get on with their lives as normal as they can, but it's really not normal. Their shelling and shooting is a daily occurrence. So
tell me about the circumstances between your parents and your siblings there.
My parents bought a farm, a retirement home, about 30 kilometers outside of Damascus 6 years ago. And unfortunately, they have not been able to see my sisters for a year now. My sisters live in Damascus, and mainly because of the checkpoints.
That's 30 kilometers.
That's 30 kilometers.
For over a year, you can't get to your grandchildren.
They have not seen their grandchildren.
Patrick, it's great to hear there's a family that is safe in Syria, but this is now spreading to be much bigger than just a Syrian issue. Tell us how the countries surrounding the area are getting affected.
Well, within Syria itself, there's at least 100,000 people who have been killed in the conflict. But of course, so many people from outside the region are fueling this conflict as well. You have countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia that are supporting rebels. You have countries like Iran that are supporting the administration. And so the conflict has grown, this rebellion, this civil war has grown to drag in these powers. At the same time, you've got an awful lot of Syrians, millions in fact, as many as 4 million, who have now fled their homes. Many of them have left to go outside the country, some into Turkey, some into Lebanon, some into Jordan. Now, Turkey is reasonably affluent, it can handle this thing very well. Lebanon and Jordan are not so well fixed. And Jordan in particular is trying to cope with 500,000 people who are in a refugee camp up in the north that they can't accommodate.
I want to ask this question of the refugee dilemma. It's an incredible crisis. Omar, what do you wish the world would do, specifically Canada?
Canada can do more than what we've done so far. I think we've taken the right position against the violence that's going on there. But I'd like to see more opportunities for Syrian Canadians who want to sponsor their family, allow them to come here, like we've done in the past with other regions that were suffering conflict.
When the Vietnamese crisis happened, we got that. We sponsored them in, we brought them in. Why is it not happening for Syrian?
I don't know. There is an allotment that the government has set aside for Syrian refugees, but they are not the ones that have ties. They're saying they go through the regular refugee sponsorship process.
Patrick, do you think we are a tougher, meaner Canada about the Syrian crisis and the incredible refugee need?
It's possible, but I have to say that in nearby Lebanon, during the civil war there, it was also possible for many Lebanese to come to Canada. And in fact, thousands and thousands did, rather like the Vietnamese Boat People program. In fact, the same fellow who coordinated the first one did the Lebanese people as well. I don't understand why it couldn't be possible right now, frankly. I think Canadians are willing to open their hearts to these people.
So what aren't we getting about this then? What don't we understand?
You know, it could be that the fact is that most Lebanese who came were Christian, and that's somehow easier to digest in this country. It could be that the people who would come over here and try and leave Syria would be one form of Muslim or another. It could be Alawite, it could be Sunni Muslim. And maybe that's what holds back some people, although I think that's inexplicable.
But we have millions of Muslims in Canada. Could there not be refugee sponsorship happening?
Well, the Statistics Canada estimates about 1 million, more or less, here in Canada, Muslims in Canada. I really don't know if that's the reason, but it's inexplicable to me why we have not been doing that so far. And I also think there is a question mark to the Syrian conflict. A lot of people are treating it like it's a hot potato.
Okay, the elephant in the room on the question mark is religion, and it is a Muslim civil war, Omar. Is there any way to de-escalate jihad?
Oh, that's a broader question that you're asking me. I mean, I think actually the longer this conflict continues and the more brutal the aggression between both sides, the more radicalized bigger segments of the population will become. And I think we're going to see more jihadis, unfortunately, if this continues.
Okay, Patrick, where are religious minorities most at risk, and where are they most safe?
Well, in Syria, there was always a tradition, frankly, in Syria, that the minorities were well protected, especially during the Assad administrations. They're very safe in Jordan. They're safe to some degree in Lebanon, of course. But they also, I have to tell you, were always known to be protected by the Assad regimes in Syria. Now, that's not to give them a vote of confidence, but it's to say that there are those who are in minorities who respect the rights of other minorities. The biggest concern for Christians in Syria is should there be a jihadi triumph, because so far those people have indicated their contempt for minorities, such as the Alawites, such as the Christians. So far, Jordan, I think, is safe, and in fact, they embrace Christianity, and I don't think there's going to be a problem there, unless that country also should fall into civil war.
Okay, Omar, you have tried to have this issue heard in Parliament. Is our government coming up with solutions that you're satisfied with as a Syrian Canadian?
I'm used to seeing our government, Canada, on the international stage to take a leadership role in de-escalating conflict, in proposing reconciliation, in proposing peacekeeping solutions. And I have not been seeing that out of this current government, unfortunately.
Okay. You know, we had a discussion here on staff about a call that one of the Christian peacemakers, Jim Wallace, is making into this, and that is that the rules in the Middle East, the Syrian conflict specifically, should hold out two things. One, the teachings of Jesus, where the most vulnerable were protected and where conflict was de-escalated, and that would mean no aerial bombardments if we were going to de-escalate this. Do either of you hold out any hope that that could happen? Patrick?
Well, it's in theory, there are a number of scenarios that could come through, but I frankly don't anticipate this. I think both sides see this as an all-out struggle at this point. The very survival of the Alawite regime is at stake, and as far as the people on the rebellion side, the rebels are concerned, it's a combination of those moderates who wanted to see real democracy come in, and an overwhelmingly large number of jihadists who have come in to fight a religious campaign.
All right. Omar El-Gabra, Patrick Martin, thank you both. And now what this discussion needs is you. Consider this question. Is the conflict in Syria Canada's business? Sheldon Neal, how do we approach a question like that?
No, Lorna, that's a very interesting question. I would have to take my cue from the good book, Love Your Neighbor as Yourself. Is what's happening in Syria directly Canada's business? Perhaps not. I don't know if many in our audience would agree. However, I will say that I believe that it's our responsibility to ensure that since we're all living together on this earth, we should do our best to have a compassionate heart to see how can we play a role in those who might be less fortunate, or those who might be looking for help. How can we play a role to ensure that we all can coexist and we all can advance?
Okay, the good book you're quoting, Sheldon,
That's right.
written in the Middle East, also challenges us to ask, who is my neighbor?
That's right. So it goes even deeper than that. That's very interesting. And what we want to know from you at home watching, well, it's simple. We want to know, what do you think about that question? Your insights is going to bring the conversation even more forward. Ways to connect with us, it's written on your screen, Facebook, Twitter. Send us an email, connect with us. We want to hear from you. Can't wait to hear what you have to say.
All right, in a moment, a Middle Eastern man who has faced shelling, capture, and been wanted dead or alive, a cleric. Still, he refuses to leave one of the most dangerous places on earth. I speak with the Vicar of Baghdad, Andrew White. Stay with us.
So this is Tom, who is a little girl who's 9 years old. This is Thawra, she's 14 years old. This is Mohammed, and he's 10 years old. This is the youngest child. This is baby Miriam. She's 2 years old. And then this is Naja, who is 16 years old. And they are a family living on their own here without their parents. It's really quite staggering. The mother has taken the father. They all came here as a family. The father died of a heart attack. The mother's taken him back to Syria to bury him, take care of the official papers. And now we're told she can't get back for at least a year because she's been registered with the Syrian officials. And so these children are on their own, literally on their own. They try to do a little bit of odd jobs. They pay $80 for a space like this for them to sleep each month. And really they have no way of paying for that. They are getting food vouchers. They've registered with the UNHCR, so they are getting at least basic food. But these are just examples of children who are just sliding backwards here in the middle of this disaster that they've lived through. They've described in detail how their house was bombed and it was burning. They all managed to escape. They got some bruises, but there was a neighbor who had visited them during that time, and he was not well, and he did not get out in time, and the house fell on him and he died. So they're facing trauma. These are just some of an example, really, a very powerful example of what's happening to children in the midst of this disaster.